A new report from the United Nations Environment Programme, or UNEP, has warned that the world is not doing enough to adapt to the consequences and impacts of climate change. UNEP released the 2022 edition of the Adaptation Gap Report on November 3, 2022, and the news from the report is not good. The Adaptation Gap Report clearly states that there is a lack of global effort in adaptation planning, finance, and implementation that could help vulnerable communities cope with the effects of climate change.
As far as adaptation is concerned, it's too little, too slow in coming. And that links very clearly to the demands by many countries around the world who are facing the impacts of climate change in many parts of the world, and they need to adapt. And in doing so, the most important thing is, as was said, finance, and that is also not coming through as it should, as was promised. Together with finance, the technological advancement and transfer of technology and capacity building for the communities and countries to be able to utilize the finance when it is made available. It's incumbent upon the international community to make sure that that happens, and that happens in a very timely and urgent fashion.
The report comes at a time when the world is experiencing the brutal effects extreme weather events induced by climate change. Scientists have now begun to attribute some of these events to the high concentrations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. In simple terms, adaptation refers to the need for countries and communities to develop effective solutions to counter the ecological, social, or economic impacts of climate change that are already happening, as well as prepare for future impacts. Adaptation is our key to become resilient. The report says that 1/3 of the 197 countries to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change have adaptation targets and plans put in place, and 90% of them have given consideration for gender and disadvantaged groups. However, the biggest problem is financing these adaptation activities in the developing world. Simply put, the promises that were made by the polluting developed nations are not getting fulfilled. Developing nations alone need $160 to $340 billion by 2030 to adapt to the ongoing crisis. But only a fraction of this has been made available till now. The difference between the financial costs of adapting to climate change in developing countries and the amount of money actually available to meet these costs is known as the adaptation finance gap. International adaptation finance flows are 5 to 10 times lower than what is required, and this gap continues to grow.
Policies currently in place, the policies we have right now, will take us to a pathway to 2.8-degree rise by the end of this century. UNEP's Adaptation Gap Report 2022, which we're launching here today, tells us that efforts to adapt are not keeping up pace with climate risks and climate impacts. So the message of this report is quite clear. Nations need to live up to the Glasgow Climate Pact with strong action, starting at COP27 in Sharm-El in Egypt.
In 2021, the world faced 432 natural disasters. The Asia-Pacific region experienced the highest number of natural disasters, most likely due to its size and susceptibility. Nations need to back their strong words from the Glasgow Climate Pact. They need to provide a clear roadmap for doubling finance for adaptation to $40 billion at COP27. This is a race against time to build resilience, a race we cannot afford to lose.